A cradle consisting only of triangles, circles and rectangles in the primary colours remained unique. A range of wooden toys made up of separate, brightly coloured elements is still on sale today. The design of many of these products was closely linked to foundation course teaching, in which there was an emphasis on colour and geometry. In the foundation course, attempts were made to subject form and colour to scientific laws. Kandinsky taught that the primary forms, the circle, the square, the triangle, represent and convey qualities identical to those inherent in the primary colours, blue, red and yellow. Primary colours and shapes also inspired the productions of the Bauhaus theatre workshop. Theatre was central to Bauhaus teaching because it provided a way of bringing several artistic forms into an intimate and expressive unity. Its artistic director was the painter and sculptor Oskar Schlemmer.
Ich halte die Bühnenwerkstatt des Bauhauses für eine der wichtigsten, zentralen Punkte dieser Institution, weil sie am deutlichsten den Gemeinschaftsgedanken in die Tat umgesetzt haben. Die Studierenden konnten also sowohl Architektur, Kostüme und Masken entwerfen und experimentieren. Und das konnte man in dieser Vielfalt tatsächlich nur an der Bühnenwerkstatt.
We did things like that. And there's my leg in there. My teachers at the time were Schlemmer, Klee, Kandinsky, and it was Moholy Nodge, who was the teacher for the foundation. And he was marvelous and wonderful and quite wonderful.
Laszlo Moholy-Nagy was a Hungarian constructivist and the master of many media. He took over the foundation course in 1923, sweeping away Itten's metaphysics and mysticism, replacing them with the mystique of the machine.
Moholy-Nagy was an extremely lively personality. He was almost childlike in his interest that everything new which came up in techniques and so on electrified him. He went right after that. He was an experimental fellow. He tried everything out himself. He was perhaps the closest friend of mine in the Bauhaus, and we influenced each other quite a bit. Moholy-Nagy was understanding what was going on in the economy and in the industrial life of the modern time, and tried to build his ideas into that.
The new foundation course was also taught by Joseph Albers, who came to the Bauhaus as a student in 1919 and became the first graduate to teach there.
Wenn ich aus einem Material etwas herstelle, dann sollte ich die Kräfte, die in dem Material sind, auch benutzen und nicht zudecken. Also dieses in dem Material denken war sein Ziel. Und er stellte Aufgaben, die etwa so lauteten wie mit dem großen Stück Packpapier, das etwa ein Yard groß ist, aus dem man Raum herstellen musste. Man konnte es falten, man konnte es schneiden, also alles das tun, was man sagt. Wir entdeckten dann, dass man es senkrecht belasten kann. Wir haben Faltungen gemacht, worauf ein Mann stehen konnte. Aber alles zusammen gesehen ist der Albers ein Mensch, der systematisch den jungen Leuten die Verrücktigkeit des Künstlers austreibt und ihn zum vernünftigen, deutlichen Denken bringt.
The paper constructions made under Albers' supervision trained the students to think not so much like artists as engineers. In 1923, the Bauhaus finally went public. The local government demanded to see what was being done with taxpayers' money, so it was agreed to mount an exhibition.
Die Ausstellung von 1923 hatte einen doppelten Charakter. Einmal stellte sie die Arbeitsergebnisse der ersten Jahre der Schule in sehr wirkungsvoller Form dar in Weimar. Es brachte sehr viel nationale Aufmerksamkeit, ja sogar auch einige internationale Aufmerksamkeit nach Weimar. Zugleich aber machte diese Ausstellung schon die Wende von dem eher expressionistischen frühen Bauhaus zum konstruktivistischen späteren Bauhaus deutlich.
The most important feature of the exhibition was a house built on a hill overlooking the Weimar Park on a street called Am Horn. The site was on a field used to grow fruit and vegetables for the Bauhaus canteen. The house was constructed from prefabricated parts and furnished entirely by the Bauhaus workshops. It was ecologically sound, cheap to build and easy to run. The Haus am Horn gave a shape to dreams about a better world.
The Haus am Horn was the experimental house built with the purpose to be so economic in price that a skilled worker in Germany would be able to afford it, with all the mod cons included, like central heating and bathroom. This was, of course, one of our ideals. We wanted to penetrate into the mass market because we thought once our things are economically priced for the man in the street and, let's say, available to be bought in shops like Woolworths, then, of course, we will succeed in changing the environment. And that, we felt, would be also changing man towards a better being.
They designed a kitchen which is a laboratory for cooking. They are using ceramics and glass that's been designed in the workshops, and it's not a sort of kitchen living room which most medium class houses intended to have, or a kitchen in which the servants would work, which is totally segregated from the rest of the house. It's part of the unit of the house, but at the same time it's laid out along rational principles. In these kitchens, they had everything, the storage, the layout, to produce an efficient centre of the household. The kitchen is remarkable in that it's a very early expression of American ideas of household management.
In 1923, hyperinflation was raging, and so the Haus am Horn, intended to be built and sold in large numbers, remained the only one of its kind. As the printing presses ran hot, the zeros on the banknotes multiplied. Some of the notes were even designed at the Bauhaus. Unemployment rose. Radical politics flourished. The Bauhaus had never been popular in Weimar. Now, increasingly branded communist, its future in a reactionary city looked bleak.
The politics was all left-wing. Some of them were communists and shouting it about. And I was doing it myself. And the Weimar citizens spat down the pavement because we were the enemy. Even that time, there were Nazi marching through the Weimar streets, protesting against communists.
Die nationalsozialistische Welle kam zuerst sehr stark hoch in Thüringen. Und wie es ja leider war, auch künstlerische Dinge wurden zum Spielball in der Politik benutzt. Und so war es also ein Kampf der Parteien. Und wie diese nationalsozialistische, damals völkische Partei stärker wurde in Weimar, wurde uns der Dampf abgeschnitten. Und ich habe mich mit meiner Fakultät zusammengesetzt und wir haben in der Öffentlichkeit das Bauhaus als geschlossen erklärt und haben so der Regierung damals den Dampf aus den Segeln genommen.
In 1925, the Bauhaus reopened in Dessau, an industrial city to the north. Dessau was politically more liberal than Weimar. It was also richer, thanks to its chemical and engineering works. Junkers, one of the world's most advanced aircraft manufacturers, had its headquarters there. Since the Bauhaus workshops were now designing for industrial manufacture and mass production, Dessau seemed like its natural home. There was money for a huge school building which Gropius designed. Thanks to advanced construction techniques, it took little more than a year to build in glass, steel and concrete. Everything was under one roof: the workshops, offices, canteen and student flats. It was the crystalline cathedral of functionalism. The Bauhaus was one of the first buildings in Europe to express the hunger for directness and simplicity which affected architecture almost everywhere at the time and were the most visible characteristics of the international style.
Es ist in seiner Anmutung ein kristallines, klares, wunderschönes Gebäude, ein Musterbeispiel für Konstruktivismus. Und es ist bautechnisch ein unglaublich modernes Gebäude, denn alle die großen Glaswände sind Vorhänge, die von oben herunterhängen. Die stehen nicht. Sie sind nicht tragend, sie sind Vorhänge.
Filled with light, uncluttered, somehow severe and clinical, the Bauhaus looked less like an art school than a huge laboratory. Appropriately enough, its leading teachers, Kandinsky, Klee and Gropius, looked less like artists than chemists or mathematicians. The workshops designed and manufactured all the furniture and fittings for the new building. They were elegantly plain, intensely rational, and made by machines in new materials. In the workshops, handicraft yielded totally to design for industrial manufacture. Modern life demanded modern methods and materials. In furniture, metal replaced wood. Screws, glue, and dovetail joints were superseded by welding. Chairs, intended for the small functional interiors of modern dwellings, followed the principles not of aesthetics, but engineering. They were inspired not by the bulky, ornate furniture of the past, but by cars, aeroplanes, and racing bicycles.